The courthouse cafeteria went quiet when my son-in-law knocked the tray out of my hands, sending scalding coffee across my shirt in front of 40 people. "Watch where you're standing, old-timer," he snapped, not even looking back as he walked off with my daughter trailing behind him, eyes on the floor. I wiped my shirt with a napkin, folded it, and sat back down. 15 minutes later, the bailiff called the courtroom to order, and my son-in-law turned pale as stone when he saw who was walking to the bench. "Before I get into it, thank you for being here with me. If you're watching this, tell me where you're from, your town, your state. I want to know who's sitting with me tonight." And one honest note: this story blends real experience with fictional details for the sake of telling it right. Names and places are invented. The lesson isn't. I want to tell you about the year I learned that love doesn't announce when it starts leaving. It just gets quieter and quieter until one day you realize the house has been silent for months and you never noticed the exact moment the noise stopped. It was late September in Columbus, Ohio, the kind of evening where the air finally breaks after a long, humid summer and you can leave the windows open without the bugs coming in. I'd spent the day cooking, a pork roast the way my late wife Diane used to make it, with apples and thyme, and a pan of cornbread because my daughter Kelly had loved it since she was a girl standing on a kitchen chair to reach the counter. She'd called that morning, voice light in a way that made my chest warm. "Dad, I want you to meet somebody. We're coming by tonight, if that's all right." "Of course it's all right," I told her. "It's always all right." I set the table with Diane's good dishes, the blue-rimmed ones from her mother, and folded the napkins the way Diane had taught me 40 years ago, though I still got the corners wrong half the time. I lit a candle even though it embarrassed me a little, doing that alone at 66 years old, a retired man setting a table like it mattered, because it did. They arrived a few minutes past 7. Kelly looked happy, her hair down, wearing a green dress I didn't recognize, smiling that smile that used to take over her whole face when she was small. Beside her stood a man named Marcus Reilly, tall, early 40s, wearing a suit that looked like it cost more than 3 months of my pension, with the kind of posture that fills a doorway before the man attached to it does. His eyes moved through my living room fast, cataloging, pricing, the way an appraiser walks through a house he's about to lowball. "Huh," he said, looking around. "This is cozy. Real cozy." He glanced at Kelly. "You never told me you grew up in a place this small." Kelly's smile faltered for half a second. "Dad worked 30 years for this house, Marcus." Sure, he said, already moving past it, not touching anything, like the furniture might leave a mark on him. I shook his hand at the door. Firm grip, brief, over before it started. "Marcus Reilly," he said. Then he checked his phone before I'd even let go. We sat down to eat. I served the roast, the cornbread, green beans I'd had simmering with bacon since 4 in the afternoon. Marcus looked at his plate the way you'd look at food somebody left out too long. "I don't really do home cooking," he announced, cutting one piece of the roast, setting his fork down after a single bite. "Too heavy for me." "Kelly, why didn't you mention we like eating out?" My daughter's face went red. "Marcus, it's fine, really." He was already on his phone, thumbs moving. "There's a decent Italian place 4 minutes from here," he said. "I'll just order something." And he did. He ordered delivery to my own dinner table while I sat across from him with a meal I'd spent all afternoon on. I kept eating anyway. I asked him what he did for work. "Insurance claims adjuster," he said. "One of the top producers in the region," he added, without me asking. I asked how he and Kelly met. He gave me 4 words and turned to talk to her about a client dinner Thursday night. After the meal, which Marcus ate maybe 5 bites of from a paper delivery bag, they moved to the living room, and I started clearing plates. Through the doorway I heard him. 40 years in this house and never once upgraded," he said, casual as talking about the weather. "That's either real humble or real stuck, and I honestly can't tell which." My hands tightened on the edge of the plate I was holding. Diane's plate. Kelly said something too soft for me to catch. "I'm just saying," he went on, "first impressions count, and this place gives off a certain impression." I washed the dishes slow, the way Diane taught me. Rinse, soap, rinse again. Let the hot water do the work. Don't rush it. When they left, Kelly hugged me at the door, long and tight, her chin on my shoulder the way she used to when she was 7. "Thanks for dinner, Dad." "It was wonderful." "Drive safe," I told her. Marcus shook my hand again on the way out. Same brief grip. then looked back over his shoulder at the worn couch, the photographs on the wall, the whole life Diane and I had built inside those four walls. And something crossed his face. Not quite contempt, closer to indifference, the look you give something that has nothing to do with you. "Good meeting you, Frank," he said. He hadn't called me anything all night. Not sir, not Mr. Bishop. Now, on his way out the door, he landed on my first name like he was addressing a parking attendant. I watched their car pull out and disappear down the street, then went back and finished the dishes and wrapped the cornbread in foil because Marcus hadn't touched it. I sat at the table with coffee gone cold and thought about the way he'd said cozy like it was a diagnosis, the way his smile never once reached his eyes, not in 3 hours, not a single time. I told myself I was wrong, that first impressions lie, that Kelly was happy, and that was the only thing that mattered. I told myself that for 2 years, right up until the Sunday calls started thinning out. They say distance gets measured in miles. I learned it gets measured in missed calls and doors that stop opening. The first year after that dinner, things felt almost normal. Kelly called most Sundays around noon, and we'd talk about her graphic design work, the Ohio weather, the tomatoes I was trying to grow in the backyard Diane had planted years before she got sick. Small things, easy things, the kind of talk that feels like home even through a phone line. Somewhere in the second year, the calls started sliding. Noon turned into 3. 3 turned into evening. Evening turned into nothing. Then a text instead. "Busy today. Call you soon. Love you." She never called soon. I started keeping a record. Old habit from the job. When numbers don't add up, you write them down. I bought a small spiral notebook and logged every call. Date, time, how long it lasted. One line about what we'd talked about. January through June of that second year, 13 calls. Average length 7 minutes. July through December, 5 calls. Average length under 3 minutes. One Sunday in late October I called, and a man's voice answered instead. Smooth, unhurried. "Marcus," I said. "Is Kelly around?" "She's occupied," he said. A pause. Not long, but deliberate. Being a wife takes a lot out of a person, Frank. Something you'd probably understand better if you'd been around more when she was growing up. My jaw locked. "I raised her by myself for 11 years after her mother passed," I said. "She can't come to the phone right now," he said, ignoring that entirely. Then, quieter, almost an afterthought, "And Frank, she's fine. You don't need to keep checking on her like she's still 16. The line went dead. I sat holding the phone a long time, thumb hovering over her name, wanting to call back, wanting to drive across town and knock on that door and ask my daughter straight to her face if she was all right. Instead, I wrote it down. Date, time, Marcus answered. Call ended 2:06 p.m. The invitations stopped. After that, 2 years of awkward holidays where Marcus talked over everybody and I sat in the corner, but at least I'd been there. Then came a Thanksgiving text. "Doing something small this year, just the 3 of us. Hope yours is good, Dad." The anniversary of Diane's passing came in November, and I bought white lilies, the kind she'd loved, and set them on the table where she used to sit every morning with her coffee. I expected Kelly around too. She'd come every year since Diane died. By 4, I called her. "Oh, Dad," her voice dropped. "I'm so sorry. Marcus had a work thing come up, a client dinner, and I had to go with him. I should have called earlier." "It's all right," I said. "I feel terrible," she said. "Don't worry about it," I told her. "I'll make it up to you, I promise. We'll do something soon." Soon came and went. It always did. Her birthday that December, I drove across town with a card and a small gift, a silver bracelet engraved with her name, and her mother's birthday, 2 dates that mattered, pressed onto one thin band. I rang the bell. Marcus opened the door in a dress shirt, no jacket, the relaxed look a man performs when he wants you to know you're standing in his territory. "Frank," he said. Not a greeting, just an identification. "I wanted to drop this off for Kelly," I said, holding up the gift bag. "Is she home?" He looked at the bag the way you look at a flyer stuck under your windshield wiper. "She's putting Maddie down for a nap," he said. "Not a great time." "I won't stay," I said. I'll give it to her," he said, and took the bag out of my hand, and the door was closed before I finished the sentence. I stood on that porch a moment, then walked back to my car. 2 weeks later, on the phone, I asked Kelly if she'd gotten the bracelet. "Oh yes," she said, a half-second too long before answering. "It's beautiful, Dad. I love it. Are you wearing it?" I asked. A pause. "I've been saving it for a special occasion." I didn't push. I wrote it down. The call that cracked something open happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Kelly called unannounced, which already meant something, and her voice came out thin, careful, like she was holding it together so it wouldn't break in her hand. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything," I said. "When I was little, when it was just you and me, were you happy? Like, actually happy?" My throat tightened. "Some of the happiest years of my life," I said. "Kelly, why are you asking me this?" "No reason," she said, too fast. "I've just been thinking about things." "What kind of things?" "I don't know," she said, a shaky breath coming through the phone, and my chest closed like a fist around something. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living somebody else's life," she said, "and I can't remember when I stopped living mine." "Kelly," I said, my voice lower than I meant it. "Talk to me." "I'm fine, Dad," she said, and the door closed again, same as it always did with her lately, same as it did with Marcus. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the notebook open in front of me, running my thumb down 2 years of shrinking numbers, and I made a decision I should have made a long time before that. I picked up the phone and called an old friend, a man named Tom Alvarez, who'd spent 30 years as a family law attorney before he half-retired to consulting work. "Tom," I said, "I need to talk something through, not for me, for Kelly." "Smart," he said, once I'd explained it. "Here's what I can do. I can have a protective legal framework ready, financial documentation, checklist, emergency custody protocols if it ever came to that, a motion for protective order on standby. All of it prepared, so the day she's ready, if she's ready, we move inside 24 hours. Do it," I said, "whatever it costs." "Frank," he said, a pause in his voice, "she still has to be the one who calls. You know that." "I know," I said. "I just need the door to open fast when she does." I hung up and sat back in my chair. The coffee had gone cold again. Outside, a cardinal was working its way through the maple tree, the same 3 notes over and over. My phone rang 40 minutes later, a number I didn't recognize at first. Then it clicked. Franklin County Common Pleas Court, Civil Division. "Frank," said a voice, warm and instantly familiar even 3 years gone. "Marion Katz, senior court administrator, the woman who'd run my docket, organized my case files, and kept my old chambers moving with a kind of quiet precision the whole building had learned to depend on. "I don't know if you've been following the Delgado case," she said. "I've been following it," I said carefully. "Then you might already know what I'm about to tell you," she said, and in the pause after that I heard something I hadn't expected. Not hesitation. Restraint, like she was working to keep it professional. "The case has been reassigned, Frank, to you." The cardinal outside went through its 3 notes again. "The Chief Justice invoked the senior judge recall provision," Marion said. "Ohio Revised Code 141.16. When the regular docket's overloaded, they can bring a retired judge back for a specific temporary assignment. Your name came up. He signed the order this morning." "Marion," I said, "does the defense attorney know who's been assigned yet?" "The docket update posted 20 minutes ago," she said. "Public record." "So no, not yet. But he will." I stood up from the table and walked to the window and looked at the maple tree, the cardinal still going. "Marion," I said, "is my robe still in the courthouse?" A beat, and I could hear something in her voice loosen, like relief that had been waiting a long time to be let out. "I kept it pressed," she said. "First of every month." I couldn't tell you why I never stopped. My throat tightened. 3 years. She'd been pressing that robe for 3 years. "I'll be there Thursday morning," I said. "I'll have courtroom 6 ready for you," she said. And then, quieter, "It's good to have you back, Frank." I hadn't walked through those courthouse doors as a judge in 3 years. The granite steps looked exactly the same, the Ohio flag snapping in the wind above the entrance. Everything precisely where I'd left it. I was the one who'd changed. Or maybe I'd finally stopped pretending to be smaller than I was. Thursday morning, 2 days before the trial, I came in through the side entrance, the one that connects straight into the judicial wing, the one the public and the attorneys never use. My old badge still worked on the reader, and something in my chest loosened at that more than I expected. Marion was waiting in the hallway outside my old chambers, silver-haired now, wearing the same navy blazer she wore to every occasion that mattered. Sentencing days, retirement parties, the week we lost a young clerk to a highway accident, and the whole floor went quiet. She looked at me the way you look at something you've expected so long. The actual arrival feels almost calm. "You look good," she said. "I look old," I said. "You look like a judge," she said, which is a different thing entirely. The chambers smelled the same, old paper and floor wax, and something faintly metallic from the air vents, the particular smell of a room where serious things get decided, held there by decades of habit. My old desk, the case reporters still lined up on the shelf where I'd put them myself. The window looking out on the parking structure, the same view I'd spent 22 years staring at while I worked through verdicts. On the coat stand in the corner, my robe, hanging like I'd left it there yesterday. I crossed the room and touched the fabric. Smooth, pressed, the folds sharp and clean. "Every month," Marion said from the doorway. "First Monday, I take it out, check it, press it if it needs it, hang it back up." She paused. "Don't ask me why. I just knew you'd need it again." My jaw tightened against something trying to break through, and I breathed my way past it. "Thank you, Marion," I said, my voice steadier than I deserved. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "You've still got to get through the ethics committee." We met with the county's judicial conduct panel at 9 that morning. 3 senior judges, 1 administrative counsel, a court reporter to make it official. I sat down and laid it out before anyone could ask. "I need to disclose a conflict," I said. "The defense attorney of record in the Delgado matter, Marcus Reilly, is married to my daughter. I've had no substantive contact with either of them in close to 2 years. I have no financial interest in the outcome of this case. The conflict is personal and relational, not financial or legal." Judge Ellen Marsh, who'd been on that bench longer than anyone in the room, leaned forward over her glasses. "Most judges in your position recuse automatically, Frank. Most judges in my position," I said, "haven't spent 3 years watching Marcus Reilly operate. I'm not recusing, because recusal is exactly what he'd want, and because the law doesn't require it when the conflict's this attenuated. Under the Ohio Code of Judicial Conduct, Rule 2.11, disqualification is required for personal bias or financial interest. A son-in-law appearing as opposing counsel, with no financial entanglement and no direct contact between the parties, falls into territory the rule handles through disclosure, not automatic recusal. I'd applied that exact standard from the bench a dozen times before. "You'll disclose in full at the opening of trial," said the youngest judge on the panel. Marcus Webb, no relation, a coincidence that made me almost laugh out loud. On the record, both sides get an explicit chance to object. "Agreed," I said. "If either side objects, I recuse immediately. No argument, no appeal." They deliberated 20 minutes. I waited in the hallway with Marion, who brought me a coffee I actually finished this time. "You nervous?" she asked. "No," I said. "Then yes, not about the committee, about Kelly, about what she's going to see when she walks into that courtroom." "She doesn't know," I said. "She'll find out the same moment Marcus does." Marion looked at me for a moment. "She's going to be all right, Frank." "I know," I said. "I just need to get through the next 2 days first." The panel reconvened, approved the disclosure with conditions, and I signed the paperwork and walked back to chambers with Marion, who helped me find the case file. I'd need 340 pages I'd read twice already, and would read again before Monday. The case was straightforward on its face and brutal underneath it. A man named Daniel Ortega, a delivery driver on the night shift, had been struck and killed, crossing a marked intersection in his own neighborhood, by a driver who ran the light doing 58 in a 35 zone, with a blood alcohol level nearly twice the legal limit. His widow, Renata Ortega, had filed a wrongful death suit against the driver, a man named Cole Whitfield, whose family had money and had hired the best defense firm in the state. Marcus was second chair for that firm. I'd read the plaintiff's exhibit list 3 times in the week before trial, knew every argument Marcus was going to make and roughly where each one would lead. Monday morning I entered courtroom 6 from the judicial hallway at 8:55 and took the bench without looking at the gallery. "All rise," the bailiff said, and I heard the room stand, heard the particular silence a courtroom makes when 50 people hold their breath at once. I read the disclosure into the record exactly as I'd rehearsed it. The defense attorney of record, Mr. Reilly, is married to my daughter. I have had no material contact with either party in approximately 2 years, and no financial stake whatsoever in this proceeding. Either side may object on the record at this time. I did not look at Marcus while I said it. I heard the silence stretch. Then Marcus's voice, flat and controlled. No objection, Your Honor. The plaintiff's counsel, a sharp, careful woman named Priya Desai, also declined to object, though I caught the flicker in her eyes. The recalibration of a lawyer realizing the ground under her had just shifted in a way she hadn't planned for. I allowed myself exactly one look at the gallery. Kelly was in the third row. She'd come, I found out later, only because Marcus asked her to sit in as moral support for a case he was certain he'd win easily. Her face had gone the color of paper. Our eyes met for less than a second. I gave her nothing. Not comfort, not apology, not a flicker of what I already knew that she didn't yet. A judge's face is a mirror, not a window. I learned that my first year on the bench and never unlearned it. Marcus sat rigid at the defense table, jaw working, staring straight ahead like a man doing complicated arithmetic in his head and not liking the answer. The first day of testimony went the way these things usually go. Careful, procedural, unremarkable, to anyone not paying close attention. Marcus's objections were sharp, well-timed, mostly correct, and I ruled accordingly every time, because that's the job. By 4 o'clock, when I called the day, Marcus walked out of that courtroom with the stride of a man who'd already decided the outcome. Renata Ortega walked out behind him with her attorney's hand on her arm, and I watched her hold her spine straight the way people do when the alternative is falling apart in public. She glanced toward the bench as she passed. I gave her nothing either. He thought my fairness was weakness. He'd made that mistake before, with me, with Kelly, with everyone he'd ever underestimated. I had no plans to correct him, not yet. The second day is where cases quietly break. Not in dramatic moments, but in the grinding procedural work nobody sees coming until it's already happened. Marcus walked in that morning with the energy of a man who'd slept well, which told me exactly where his head was. I hadn't slept at all. I'd sat at my kitchen table until past 1 in the morning going through Priya Desai's exhibit list, line by line. Not because I doubted her case, but because I needed to know exactly what was coming before it arrived. Somewhere around midnight on page 19 of her exhibit log, I found it. Exhibit 14B, a set of toxicology and accident reconstruction reports compiled by the Columbus Police Department in the 72 hours after the collision. The kind of evidence that, presented properly, tells the story of that intersection with the precision of a stopwatch. But the chain of custody form attached to it was missing a required signature. The evidence technician had initialed the transfer log but never signed the certification block. Under Ohio Rule of Evidence 901, authentication requires an unbroken, fully documented chain of custody. An initial isn't a signature. The evidence, as filed, couldn't come in. I sat with that for a long time before I closed the file and went to bed and lay there thinking about Daniel Ortega and what it costs a man to run a red light at 58 miles an hour. Morning came, the courtroom filled, and Priya moved through her first witnesses with the confidence of someone who didn't yet know what was waiting for her. At 10:40, she moved to admit Exhibit 14B. Marcus was on his feet before she finished the sentence. Objection, Your Honor. Chain of custody. The certification block on the evidence transfer form is unsigned. The chain is broken under Rule 901. Every head in the room turned to me. I opened the exhibit, examined the log, found exactly what I'd found the night before. Objection sustained, I said. Exhibit 14B is excluded pending proper authentication. Counsel, you have 24 hours to cure the deficiency. The sound that moved through the gallery wasn't loud. It was a single, collective breath, the sound of 50 people recalculating at once. Priya's composure held, but barely, a muscle working in her jaw. Understood, Your Honor, she said, sharp and tight. Renata Ortega had both hands pressed flat against her thighs, knuckles gone the color of bone. Marcus sat back down and didn't celebrate, too careful, too aware of the optics, but something in the way he occupied his chair had changed. The tension of the morning was gone, replaced by an ease, a settledness, the posture of a man watching the scale tip his direction and feeling comfortable enough to wait for it to finish moving. During the afternoon recess, I stood near my chamber's door and heard him in the hallway, voice carrying. This exclusion changes their whole timeline, he was saying to someone, probably his associate. Their case loses cohesion without 14B in front of the jury in the right order. We push hard tomorrow, and by close of business, a pause. Tell me I'm wrong. A quieter voice. You're not wrong, Marcus. Again, the certainty of a man who'd already written the ending. I closed the chamber's door. I sat at my desk and looked at my phone. One message, received that afternoon from a number I didn't recognize, that I'd already read twice. Judge Bishop, I need to speak with you through proper channels regarding a witness. Please have your clerk contact me. P. Desai. I set the phone face down. Marcus went home that night certain the next morning belonged to him. He had no idea what was already walking toward that courthouse. She didn't call ahead. She didn't ask my permission or my blessing or my opinion. She just showed up, the way she used to at 7 years old when she'd already made up her mind about something and didn't see the point in discussing it first. I found out the same way Marcus did when Priya Desai stood up at 9:04 on the morning of the third day and said, Your Honor, the plaintiff moves to add one supplemental witness. The motion and supporting documentation were filed with the clerk at 7:50 this morning. Under Ohio civil procedure, a party can add a witness after the discovery deadline if they demonstrate the witness has material information that couldn't have been reasonably anticipated. Priya had filed before the building even opened to the public. The witness was a young woman named Devon Marsh, a barista who'd been working the drive-through window at a coffee stand 2 blocks from the intersection that night, and who had, until 3 days earlier, never been located by either side's investigators. She'd come forward after seeing a local news segment about the trial, carrying with her a piece of information nobody had known existed. A security camera at her drive-through, angled toward the street, that had captured Cole Whitfield's car 40 seconds before the collision, swerving twice across the center line. Priya had spent 3 days quietly authenticating the footage through the coffee chain's corporate security office before filing the motion. Marcus objected on every ground available to him: untimely disclosure, prejudice, lack of proper notice, and every objection was reasonable, and I overruled every one of them. Because the standard was met and the footage was real, and excluding it now, on a technicality, would have meant hiding the truth from a jury that deserved to see it. That objection is overruled, I said. The witness may be called. Marcus's face didn't change much. That was the thing about him. He was too controlled to let a courtroom see him rattled. But I'd had 2 years of dinners and phone calls and a closed front door to study that face, and I knew what I was looking at. Devon Marsh testified for 11 minutes. The footage played twice. The jury watched Cole Whitfield's headlights drift across the yellow line, twice, 40 seconds before impact, at a speed the reconstruction expert would later put at 58 miles an hour in a 35 zone. When the footage ended the second time, the room stayed silent for a long moment. The kind of silence that means something has landed. Marcus tried. He cross-examined Devon Marsh carefully, tried to raise doubt about the camera's timestamp, about lighting conditions, about the angle she held up under it. Calm, unshaken, a young woman with nothing to gain and nothing to hide. By the time she stepped down, something had shifted in that courtroom that no objection was going to shift back. Closing arguments came on the 4th day. Marcus stood and gave the best closing I'd heard from him in 3 days of trial. Careful, controlled, appealing to reasonable doubt about the reconstruction methodology, about correlation versus causation, about a jury's duty not to be swept up by an emotional video. It was a good argument. It was also, by then, not enough. The jury went out at 11:40 that morning. 3 hours and 8 minutes later, Marion knocked at 2:48. They're back, she said. The foreperson, a man in his 50s with reading glasses pushed up into gray hair, stood and delivered the verdict in 5 words. We find for the plaintiff, Renata Ortega sat completely still for one breath. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph she'd tucked away before the proceedings started. Her husband laughing at whoever was holding the camera, and she pressed it to her chest and wept, quietly, completely, without performance left in her, the way you weep when something wrong has finally, irreversibly been made right. I read the formal judgment into the record, referred a discovery conduct question involving Cole Whitfield's insurer to the state bar for review, removed my robe, and hung it on the hook in my chambers for what I already knew would be the last time. I was halfway down the main corridor when Marcus caught up to me. You planned this, he said, voice raw, every layer of polish stripped off it, all of it. I stopped and turned. He looked like a man who'd been taken apart piece by piece, jacket open, tie loose, carrying the wreckage of somebody who'd built his whole identity on never losing. I ruled correctly, I said. Every objection you won. You won because you were right about the law. That's what fair looks like. You never recognized it, because you've spent so long working around it instead of inside it. You destroyed my career, he said, voice cracking on the last word. Everything I built. No, I said, keeping my voice level. You made every choice that brought you here. I just made sure you made them in front of the right people. His jaw worked, eyes bright and desperate. Say something else, he said. Fight back. You don't get to just walk away from this. I looked at him one last time, at the man who'd stood in a cafeteria and told a 66-year-old man to watch where he was standing. The courtroom judged what you did, I said. Life will judge who you chose to be. I turned and didn't look back. Kelly was standing at the end of the hallway, Maddie beside her, one small hand wrapped in her mother's. Kelly took 2 steps toward me, then closed the rest of the distance and put her arms around me without a word. I felt her exhale against my shoulder, long and shaking. Something finally let go after holding on too long. Dad, she said, just that, just the one word, and it was enough. Then a small hand found mine, and Maddie looked up with her mother's eyes and said the only thing left worth saying, Grandpa, can we go home now? The 3 of us walked out through the courthouse doors into a cold, bright October afternoon. Maddie in the middle, her right hand in mine, her left in her mother's. Kelly filed for divorce that November. Christmas Eve, she and Maddie came to my house. Pork roast, cornbread, Maddie, telling me a long and very serious story about a cat she wanted to name Pretzel. Kelly laughing, really laughing. For the first time in what felt like years, I set a card on the mantel next to Diane's photograph. In Kelly's handwriting, to the greatest judge I ever knew. Love, Kelly and Maddie. She's home, I said quietly. To nobody. To Diane's picture. To the empty room. They're both home. I spent 32 years deciding right from wrong for people I'd never met before they walked into my courtroom. The hardest case of my whole career turned out to be the one sitting at my kitchen table that night, laughing at something I hadn't quite caught, calling me Grandpa like it was the most natural thing in the world, which I suppose it always had been. If there's one thing this whole ordeal taught me, it's this. Silence is not patience. Staying quiet while someone you love is being worn down, piece by piece, in front of you that isn't wisdom. That's fear wearing wisdom's clothes. And I wore that mask 2 years too long. Don't make my mistake. Don't wait until the damage is already done to say something. Don't tell yourself distance is protecting anyone, when really, it's just easier than the fight. The people who love you don't need you perfect. They don't need you powerful. They need you present. I believe that docket assignment landed on my desk at exactly the right moment. Not a day early, not a day late. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was chasing something for Kelly, and for a woman named Renata Ortega who deserved somebody to finally believe her. Those are 2 different things, and the difference matters more than most people realize. This is my truth, from 66 years of living it. The law can restore what was taken from you. Only love can restore who you lost along the way. I got my daughter back. That verdict, that was the easy part. If this story stayed with you, if something about Frank felt familiar, felt like someone you know or something you've carried yourself, tell me in the comments. Type A if you think he did the right thing. Type B if you'd have handled it differently. Every answer matters to me. Share this with somebody who needs to hear it tonight. And if you haven't subscribed yet, friend, this is your sign. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. It means more than I know how to say. See you in the next one.